has kindly come down from Nelson to present to us on her PhD, which she's just starting, so she wants us all to be nice to her. I did say that we were really friendly and we gave nice, positive, constructive feedback. So Rebecca has 20 years experience working with children and adults and their families. After starting her career as a primary school teacher, Rebecca retrained as an educational psychologist and began specialising in working with children with a wide range of health conditions. For the past 9 years, she has worked individually with children with ASD and their families for IDA services and TAGPO services. She commenced her PhD with the Rehabilitation Teaching and Research Unit within the University of Otago, Wellington in September this year. So over to you, Rebecca. Thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you very much for having me come and speak. This is my first foray out to public with this project. I don't have a lot to report on my piece of research yet, but what I thought I could do is perhaps tell you why I'm doing what I'm doing. So, here we go. Okay, so yeah, like my little blurb said, I've been working in the kind of disability industry, for want of a better word, for about 20 years now. And I would go along to meetings with my colleagues and people from other organisations and with families, and I'd often hear comments like this being bandied about. And I thought to myself, oh, that's interesting, because the people that are doing the work, they often have the same skill sets, they often have the same tools, they've got the same intentions, and they're on the whole really nice people. So what's happening with the comments here? Some good ones, some bad ones, they're all quite vague. And I was talking to a colleague about these, and he said, well, why don't you phone up Fiona Graham, who I did, and I said, look, I'm really interested in what happens between the practitioner and the client. And she said, well, you might be interested in the family-centred literature. So I started having a look at the family-centred literature, and what I found was that it really kind of resonated with my experience. And so I'll just go over a little bit about what family-centred care kind of is, really. So it's a set of principles, first and foremost. So people who kind of work within this model, they recognize that the family is central to a person's life and is the constant in a person's life. And it's a primary source of strength and support. And there's also a recognition that the family has expertise in the family system, and also they know something about the outside world as well. Now, there's an acknowledgement of the uniqueness and diversity within families as well. Can I just use this bit? Oops, sorry, I've just done something wrong. Let's get back to slideshow. Sorry about that. Can I do it like that? Can you get that down? Just have to do it like that. Okay. Yeah. Yep, that's great. Okay, and I'll just zip on over. There we go. So there's that family, and they're unique and they're diverse, and they've got skills. And so there's a recognition as well that the practitioner works and the family work together in an open, trusting kind of way. And there's also a recognition that the practitioner can be a facilitator for the family to access emotional supports, maybe physical supports, maybe financial supports out in the community. This is all from a strength-based perspective. So the whole idea of this sort of working model is that people work together to build on strengths that are already in the family help build capacity, so a family can cope, and empower the family to be able to do that. Now there's two sort of components to family-centered practice. The first one is relational, and the second one is participatory. With the relational side of things, you might do things like active listening, or have a wondering stance when you're working with a family, or you might do some reflective questioning. So that builds on a relationship. With the participatory side of things, you might do some of these things, like provide information, so the family can make informed decisions about the way they would like to see things happen. Joint decision making in families. That's to do with you bringing your own expertise to a family situation and them sharing theirs as well. Teaching, maybe a skill, a family would like to learn a skill so they can go forward themselves with something, or even assisting sometimes might be necessary. I'm going to just say a little vignette here. I was talking to Fiona earlier today. She says, "Oh, maybe not." But I will. I'll in my line of work, we often got referrals for children that were suffering from anxiety, that had emotional meltdowns and things like that. So one day I went to this house with this family whose child was doing this, and I was talking to Mum just about sort of the daily routine, what happens in the daily routine. And she spent quite a long time just talking about the care routines, like the washing and the dressing and all of that kind of thing. And I thought to myself, oh, it seems like a lot of her time's taken up with that aspect of things. It doesn't directly, we're not directly talking about anxiety and meltdowns or anything like that, but I was thinking, it takes up a lot of her time. And I said, this takes up a lot of, do you think, it sounds as though this takes up a lot of your time. She goes, yeah. And she looks at me like, yeah, obviously. And then I thought to myself, how does she get anything else done? And so I asked her that. I said, how do you manage to get everything else done? Because she's got other children and things like that. She goes, I don't. And she started to cry. She welled up. And I thought to myself, oh man, I don't know. So that's the relational sort of side of family-centered practice. And then I thought to myself, now I know that the Needs Assessment Coordination Service, the NAS, they often provide funding for personal cares for people. And so I asked her, I said, have you been in touch with your NAS recently? And she goes, no, I haven't. And I thought to myself, well, she's probably too busy to do that. And I said, well, would it be helpful if I phoned up the NAS and asked them to phone you? And she said, yeah, that would be helpful. And so what happened from that was that she got a little bit more funding for personal cares, and they got someone in to help in the morning. So the referral situation was all about anxiety and meltdown. But you can see how that little tiny piece of family-centeredness probably helped quite a lot. Yeah. Okay, so I started having a look at the evidence base. I thought, well, this is all well and good, but what about, what's the impact here? What's the evidence for it? So Dunst, who has been looking into this field for about 40 years, he had a look at different types of programs, family-centered to family-centered, and he asked the parents that were participating on these programs to rate the helpfulness of the programs that they were participating on. And what they found was the family-centered ones were rated far more helpful than the professionally-centered programs. This was at the early childhood population, children with developmental disabilities attending programs. Two lines there. This one here is the relational help-giving practices, and this one here is the participatory. So you can see how both of them help out. So in this one here, Dunst wondered what was influencing, what these help-giving practices were influencing. And this was his kind of model that he was thinking about, that the help-giving practices feed into people's belief about their ability to cope, which feeds into outcomes. And this is what he found, that family-centered practices I thought that was quite interesting. Another study that's perhaps a little bit closer to home is this one, where it was a systematic literature review, and they had a look at children with special healthcare needs. And so those are children that have to access the hospital at reasonably frequent intervals for things like asthma, or they might be chronic, but they might be acute issues. And what he found was pretty interesting. He only took studies that had comparisons with standard care. So it was family-centered care on the one hand, and these were compared with populations that were doing the standard care. So what he found was that families had better access to care, less time off work, less time off school, better family functioning, better health literacy. Practitioners had higher satisfaction ratings, better clinical decision-making, better communication. Hospitals had less need for specialists, less time in hospital. Okay, so the last two reviews were quite broad brush with particular populations. They had the early childhood population, all the developmental disabilities you have in there. And this one had the children with special health care needs. And I was wondering, this actually brings me to my first research question, which is I was wondering how family-centered practices were for my particular population, autistic spectrum disorders. And the reason why I'm having a look at autistic spectrum disorders is because, well, just for those of you that are unfamiliar with autism, autism is something that it impacts on people's ability to socially communicate, it impacts on their ability to organize themselves, and it also impacts on their ability to filter out sensory information, or filter it appropriately. There's lots of comorbid conditions associated with autism, and families that have people in them that have autism have worse mental health, more mental health issues, a lower sense of well-being, and there's often a financial burden that they incur as well, and that's something with ASD.
And that's in relation to other types of childhood
And
disabilities
that's,
as
yeah,
well.
yes, that's compared to families that have other children with other disabilities. And this is what families with people in them that have autism, this is what they have to cope with. They have to talk to the Ministry of Health for their early childhood needs. They have to talk to the Ministry of Education for their primary school needs, their schooling needs, and they also sometimes have to talk to the Ministry of Social Development. They have multiple assessments, multiple referrals. There's tons of acronyms: NAS, OT, SLT, RTLD. They have to cope with so much stuff. And so how professionals work with these families really matters. Yeah, it's interesting. I came across this study here, which Fiona took part in actually. What they did was they surveyed some people, a population that had children with an ASD diagnosis, and they had a look at how helpful or how helpful supports were. And they looked at informal supports as well as formal supports. So you can see the mean score for the helpful for the formal supports was 2.95. This is out of a scale from 1 to 5. So 2.95 is pretty low. But I mean, given that some of those supports, it is pretty low, really, isn't it?
There was professional agencies.
Well, the agencies were 3.02, yeah. So some of the formal supports might be paid carers. But the agency scores, which is what I was interested in, these are the people that are supposed, trained like psychologists, like OTs, like speech language therapists, and their rating was really mediocre. And this really surprised me. So this started me thinking, so I wonder what's happening there. And this is my second research topic here. So what I wanted to do again is there's another survey. family-centeredness of service delivery. So I'm asking practitioners too, because I think it would be interesting to find out what they thought. Did they think that they were delivering services in a family-centered way? Because everyone says that. I did a bit of a straw poll, and I just phoned up some people I knew in each of those agencies, and I said, do you think that you deliver services in a family-centered way? And they all said yes, of course.
It's on your website.
Yeah? That's right. Yeah. So that's what I'm going to find out in my second phase. My third phase is I'm still not quite sure for which direction I'm going to go. A lot of it will depend on what happens in the phase 1 and phase 2 of my research. I've got a couple of alternatives. One is to do a qualitative study and find out a little bit more about what it is that practitioners do that looks like it's family-centered or it stops it from being family-centered. So that's one way that I can go. Another way that I can go is to see if we can use some kind of educational model to enhance family-centered practice with practitioners and to see if we can move their thinking towards a more family-centered way. Right, so I've finished. So thank you very much for listening to my spiel today. And I want to acknowledge Otago University because they've given me the scholarship, which I appreciate, and also Fiona and Elliot, who are my supervisors for this project, this burgeoning project.